Welcome to another edition of On My Couch. My name's Damien O'Malley. I'm the founder of OMC Group, and what OMC Group does is we help people work better together. What we do is leadership development and culture, team effectiveness, the people side of business, and the outcome is helping people work better together. I'll introduce my co-host Sue, but actually I'll ask Sue to introduce herself in a minute. And we've got a special guest in Liza Boston. And Liza, I'll do a brief intro and then I'll introduce you in a minute as well. On my couch, what's it about? It's about actually having really interesting conversations with really clever and smart people. The idea being is that we learn something that's going to either help us in our business, maybe help us in our personal life, or might just be really interesting as well. So, Liza, I'll come to you in a minute, but Sue, maybe introduce yourself.
Hey Damien, hey Liza. I nearly stuffed that up at the start already, but there you go. I didn't forget my name. So
That's
I've
good.
spent about 30 odd years in corporate life and now have what's called a portfolio career on a couple of boards in terms of not-for-profits and also some small privately owned boards as well. So I'm really interested today to talk to Liza about what she does and being an entrepreneur and that sort of get up and go. And there's lots of myths about entrepreneurs that you don't sleep. And we were chatting obviously at the start of this call, and it becomes very clearly I don't think you do either. But yeah, looking forward to the chat today.
Cool. And a very astute point, Sue, because I had the same thing. I was curious about how many hours you have in your day, Liza, because I've only got 24 in mine. But you're currently your roles co-founder of itsports, managing director of Boston Impact, co-founder of Flower Capital, advisor for the Taboo Group, and exec producer of Wolftide Films. So that's just it's not a bad little portfolio just to keep you interested. So, Sue's already referred to what we're keen to do is maybe tap into the life of a co-founder or a founder, women's sport and growth. I mean that's what It Sports is about. So what are the opportunities from a business perspective and what excites you about that? Keen to explore that a little bit. And then also through these conversations, we're really fascinated about people's journey and their leadership insights and reflections as well. So that looking back type of piece. So maybe before we get into the topics, share us a little bit more about you and your career and the
Yeah,
different things that you're doing and how did you get to this point, I suppose, is the question.
well, that's a big question,
It is a big question.
and it's a long career, and I suppose, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been a tech founder now for nearly 25 years,
Wow.
which if you think about how far technology's come in that time, and I started my career in the corporate world, and kind of found out pretty early on that it wasn't really for me, and so I ended up in the UK in the first dot-com boom, where
Hmm.
we were actually my job was we were laying fiber around the UK and Europe and teaching businesses how to use the internet. What is this thing called the internet? And
Yeah.
it was the kind of the first boom, like the massive bubble. Like we had a song, it's a billable day because we could pay our rent by lunchtime on a Tuesday, and that was the rest of it. We thought was fun tickets. And then I remember the day that the first dot-com crash came, and our share price went from $500 down to zero, and we kind of got spat out. And we thought, oh, we'll never get a job in tech ever again. Like that was the feeling. Anyway, came home, came back to Australia, started one of the first digital media companies in Australia, and
Wow.
ended up working in 2007. I was in and landed in San Francisco, California. The day that a guy called Mark Zuckerberg sold a 1% share of his company to Microsoft for $250 million, which we thought was a lot of money back then.
Yep.
And they launched that day, the same kind of around the same time they launched the first iPhone. I got to meet the guy who seed funded Google. His name was Mike Moritz, and at this
Wow.
conference in San Fran, and I said to him, why did you seed fund those guys? He said, well, they were smart. They're from Stanford. They didn't have girlfriends. They were ugly. They were really hardworking. And he said, I drove in my red Ferrari. I drove up to their sister's garage and wrote them $100,000 check. I'm like, wow,
Wow.
that's pretty cool. He said, do you want to meet them? I was like, what? So I turned around, there they were, met Sergey and Larry, and they got to kind of use the iPhone to Google Earth my office. And I just, at that stage, I thought, well, if these guys can do it, like, why can't we? Why can't I? And then after meeting Mike, he introduced me to another guy called Ron Conway, and he's like just an iconic kind of VC in the Valley. And he told me he had 680 investments. I said, geez, Ron, how do you know which companies you're invested in? He goes, I don't. Just walk around and go, hey, how's the company going? And they either say, good, Ron, or they say, hey, I want to invest. So it's kind of, also Rupert Murdoch turned up to that conference. He just bought MySpace for $580 million. And they ended up tanking that because they put News Corp execs into the company. Anyway, fast forward. So then we go, that's Web 2.0. During that time, I got an entrepreneur's visa to the UK and I got my first tech patent. And I launched and scaled alivemusic.com, which was really, really exciting time, a heady time. It's kind of 2010. We were working with really when Spotify, Audio, Deezer were just kind of coming online. Skype had just kind of been invented. I remember one time I was invited to the Skype HQ in London to tell the whole company that it was possible to run a global company using Skype. And so this is 2010, this isn't that long ago. This is 15 years ago. And so what we did there was we worked in 50,000 seater stadiums and we launched a couple of satellites and we had a petabyte worth of data. And we actually got a petabyte worth of data. That's like a ton of data. And we'd work directly with the artists, with the bands. We launched with a guy called Tom York, who had a band called Radiohead, and Nigel Godrich. And what we did was we took a beautifully mixed audio feed from the front of house desk from the 50,000 seater stadium, and we took up to 20-30 video camera feeds, and we sucked it via satellite from the stadium back under the ocean, back to South Melbourne, where we mixed it, mastered it, color graded it, transcoded it in real time. Then we bounced it up to the Amazon AC3s and we broadcast live in 196 countries, from the syncing of the audio to the video. And it was just the first time in the world it's ever happened. It was such an incredible experience to kind of go through that. And the technology we were building there really kind of underpins everything that we're doing now. So even this call, the way that we're able to record this and to broadcast this. And so got to tour the world with top 50 bands for a while, which was, quite cyclonic. I remember one time in Oakland, California, there was Eddie Vedder was on his second or third bottle of red. There's a packed stadium, Pearl Jam. We were paying 30,000 US an hour for the satellite. And I was like, if that guy has one more glass of red, plays one more song, I'm going to lose my house, And so our little kit was just back behind the drum kit on stage and looking out to a sea of 50,000 people dancing and using your technology. You realize I've just turned my office into a rock and roll stadium, which was kind of cool. But like all the trauma of that, it's that was a really complex business because you're dealing with the band who are drunk, and you're dealing with an audience who I don't know what they're doing. They're on all sorts of things trying to download your app, and in the live environment, you really couldn't get any more high pressure. And you've got investors, you've got. I remember the chairman of Universal Music. He said to me to my face in 2010, he said, not in my lifetime are digital music sales ever going to overtake physical record sales. And I got spat out. It was the middle of London. It was snowing. I'm like, I'm going to lose my house. And then fast forward, here we are. It's now we're living in a digital world. So and then what happened then was, in those days when I was a tech entrepreneur, then everyone wanted to be a tech entrepreneur. Then everyone wanted to be a fund manager. So I was really interested in the fact that why only 2% of women got funded from VC funds. And this is a global trend. It's worse in Australia. Actually, this year it's under 1%. Wow. So I thought, in COVID, I'll learn how to build funds. So I started building VC tech funds, ESVCLP, early stage venture capital, limited partnerships. I got to understand capital flow. Where does it come? When you go to the neck of capital, you kind of see where it flows and who gets to participate and carried interest. This is where intergenerational wealth comes from. It's really this is another whole topic, how women are kind of blocked out of those kind of structures. It's really hard for first time fund managers to get institutional funding. So I started doing that, and at the same time, kind of raising young boys who are really sports fanatics.
Yep.
The language with boys is always sport, and so
Yep.
our investment thesis started to lean towards sport. And I saw hundreds of millions of dollars going towards men's sport.
Yep.
And, at the same time, the Matildas rise up and the
Mm-hmm.
Paris Olympics. And I was in Austin, Texas last year, and it kind of occurred to me, like, as an investor, like, this is a mispriced asset. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not an elite performance issue with women. It's not skill sets. It's not passion, drama. Everything's there except for capital
Yep.
and governance and
Yep.
assets to invest in. So I actually, called my sister, and this is the baby that it's kind of like the baby that you didn't mean to have. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, look, there are no credible platforms to invest in. We better just start one.
Yep.
And
Wow.
like, starting a business today in 2025 is so different than 2015, 2010,
Mm.
2005. Like, it's like a breath of fresh air.
Yep.
We're in Web 3.0 now, and I'm still here, still batting. And what makes it so exciting for me is that just the acceleration of technology and how we can wield it. Anyone can. You guys are doing it right now. It's so
Yeah.
exciting
Yeah.
for your business,
Yeah.
So how do we use AI in our thinking, in our creative, in our processes? How do we accelerate? And so I'm really, really happy to talk lots more about women's sport, because it's a human rights issue, an equal pay issue.
Yeah.
There's so much in it. It's when women succeed in sport, they succeed in governance, in politics, in life, and even in at home.
Mm-hmm.
So there you
Wow.
go.
I'm not sure
Boom.
about you, Sue, but I'm pretty tired right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right? Hello, it's an
But
amazing career.
yeah, but also there's one thing. I mean, lots resonated you, but working with people who are drunk. I mean, Sue, maybe you can take over from here now. Is that? Yeah.
So, I mean, that's obviously a very fast snapshot
Mm.
of everything that you've done. So if we just slow it down and just talk about what does a normal day or a normal week look like for you, just talk about what sort of, with everything that's going on with your family and your career, what does a normal day and week look like?
Well, yeah. Look, I'm a proud member of the 5 a.m. club. Like, I think that's where it begins. I don't know. I think there's lots of research around that. I think you need to have. I mean, I've learned the hard way. I used to be in the 5 a.m. club in a different way. I used to, like, come home at 5 a.m. and now I
Yeah.
get up at 5 a.m. I've done the whole thing. I've probably got the benefit of wisdom and hindsight, but I know that to be a high performer, you have to really focus, just like athletes, on your sleep, on your nutrition, on your mental health. You have to have a really great mix of family life and social life. So I just find I have a really kind of I have a lot of thoughts. When I went to uni, I did arts and I did commerce. So I
Mhm.
kind of sit between the arts and the creative and the commercial. So there's always ideas. That's the problem. When you have millions of ideas, you have to find a way to kind of contain them. And that's, I think it's yeah, it comes from massive curiosity and interest, and having lots of different interests and lots of different kind of networks. It's really important. Like, I draw greatly from my artists and musicians and composers and directors and editors, and poets and philosophers, just as much as investment bankers and corporate, people that I know. And
Mhm.
I feel really privileged to have a really broad global network. And the thing is, we have this thing called the internet, so you can always find someone to talk to any day or night. And, like, honestly, like, if, like, in everything that I do, having a global perspective is so important. And I've lived and worked in many different countries. I've operated companies in 7 or 8 different countries. I find in Australia we have to think beyond our borders. I'm
Mhm.
doing lots of work at the moment in Southeast Asia, which I'm loving, and I've done work before in China and Japan and in India. We go to South America. We're talking to Africa, the US, UK, Europe. Like, there's a lot of really amazing people, and it's so easy to connect using the platforms that we have. And so, yeah, so I do a lot of yin and yang kind of stuff. Like
Hmm.
I kind of sometimes, and I can be an all or nothing person with massive hyper focus. And I don't know if that's a characteristic of an entrepreneur, but you have to be able to be hyper focused and also have this incredible ability to suspend belief. Because when you're creating something from nothing, like the job is to really, it kind of reminds me of that the film, Indiana Jones at the Temple of Doom, when he walks out and he can't see the path, but he has to believe, and he
Mm.
takes the first step and the path appears. There's a lot of that kind of stuff written in scripture and whatnot that I read it, but it's just it's just a pure exercise in overcoming fear and overcoming and just really believing in your ability to do it, and I think that for me, having the opportunity to, at a young age, see other people doing it, like seeing is believing too,
Hmm.
and just thinking, okay, well, it has to be possible. Let's give it a go. And the flip side of that is you've got to really be prepared to fail. So, like, my backup is always, I've got a little place down the coast. I think, oh, geez, I could live here with a six pack and sit on the beach and just surf every day. I'd be just as happy. Like having a fallback. Like, I think you become a much better negotiator and you can do much better deals when it's not all on the line.
But you've obviously put it all on the line, because that's got you to where you are as well. But so when do you have those lightning bolt moments? Is that at 5 a.m.? Does it just in the middle of the night? Do you have a notepad beside your bed, or how
Well,
do you generate your ideas?
yeah, well, listen, I would normally never leave the house without a notepad. I do things, I do writing courses, painting, drawing. I think that, Rick Rubin, I looked to masters, I talked to composers. Like I remember meeting a composer and I remember him teaching me how he creates a song in the shape of like a snowflake or a wine bottle, or, like it's often when you're using the other part of your brain that,
Hmm.
something arises. Read widely, listen to a
Hmm.
lot of music, go to music art festivals, art galleries. I think it's about just being curious and yeah, and tuning in. I mean, I must admit, I do listen to a lot of podcasts. Like I have a bad habit of waking up. I play them all night, so I can wake up in the middle of the night and tune in to something that's, and then I might get an idea from some random kind of history podcast, and yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And then maybe if we sort of, I think we've sort of started exploring this a little bit, and you mentioned, the hyper focus and the curiosity. So, if we sort of build on that and attributes, whether personality traits, if you want to be a successful founder, what else is there? So we've talked about hyper focus, we've talked about curiosity, we've talked about networking. What are the other components from your experience in terms of being in inverted commas, a successful founder?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I joke about this a lot. But I think from a female perspective as well, if you don't have to pay like massive school fees, that really helps. Having, yeah, look, I think it's like sitting outside of structure. Like
Yep.
it's a really hard thing to do. It actually is. Like if you have to be, honestly, like you have to have access to capital.
Yep.
Um, it's a really hard thing to do if you don't.
Hmm.
Like if you kind of break down and look at some of the most successful founders. I mean, Elon Musk's a great example. He came from massive privilege.
Hmm.
Um, you have to have a backup. You have to,
Yep.
have alternative income sources. Like it's honestly, yeah, it's incredibly hard, and that's why I think it blocks a lot of people out. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of
Mm.
ideas, but it's also, you have to have a myriad of skills. Like you need to know how to do, budgeting and modeling and financial forecasting, and you have to know how to work with lawyers and accountants and contracts and patents. And I mean, it
Yeah.
is extremely challenging. You have to have a lot of energy.
Yep.
You have to kind of really want it more than anything else in the world.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's you can kind of glamorize it a lot, but
Mm.
it's a lot of really, really hard work and it's sacrifice.
Yep.
It's not for everyone. Like,
Yep.
but it's kind of like being like, sometimes I think I'm like a wildebeest in the forest, like just like let loose, and you got to be mad hunter.
Yeah.
Like you've got to sit in that tree and wait and wait and wait and
Yeah.
wait. And then the worst thing is it's always the way, like the darkest night of the soul comes right
Yeah.
before the dawn. Like you're gonna sit in that tree and think you're gonna lose a leg, and then
Yeah.
the next thing you know, you get the beast. So
Wow.
like there's a lot of like that's what I think I've learned, and I've learned a lot from like I study like big wave surfing, which I love.
Right.
You got to
Yeah.
hold your breath for a long time when you get
Mm.
wiped out. Like I think it's 7 to 9 minutes or something like that. You know,
Wow.
like you look at Nazare and I watch them, I think, wow, because like that's the closest thing to I think to being an entrepreneur is that big wave surfing, having the guts to
Mm.
get towed out the back and get on that wave, and you know
Mm.
any second you're gonna fall, you can fall over and wipe out lose everything, and you've just got to try it a few times and have a go, but
Yeah.
it's painful and it's like it's there's a lot of people out there that are going to try and stop you as well. Sometimes
Yeah.
people don't like disruptors. They don't like change.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a heady world of like lots of things can happen.
So what's different, if anything, because you've been a co-founder, but you've also been an investor, right?
Mm.
So what is different, if anything, when you've sort of got one hat on, when you've got the co-founder and you, like you said, all the great things, you're the big wave surfer. When you're in the investor, I would imagine you're not quite the big wave surfer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the investor, I've found that really challenging as
Yeah.
an entrepreneur. Like I think I've tested both and I
Yeah.
realized that I am a creator.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of like using the surfing analogy. It's like you are a big wave surfer and you're
Right.
giving the board to someone else and you're telling them, get
Yeah.
out the back there, have a go. But you can kind of go out there and give them a few tips, but
Yeah.
then they get on the wave and you're like, oh, they're doing it all wrong. Wow, I can do that better. What do you mean you're doing that? And it's great too though. Like and maybe yeah, completely different skill sets.
Yeah.
Like it's really easy academically to analyze, and this is where your work comes in. I think it's really interesting because there's such a human component to it. Like as an investor, you're investing in the person, like
Absolutely.
especially at an
Yep.
early stage, and that just getting that like that people management thing right. Like some of
Yep.
my investors will just call and say, you know what, good on you, mate. You're doing a great job. Just keep hanging in there. We're proud
Yep.
of you. Like that kind of coaching.
Yes.
And because sometimes it can be very isolating being an entrepreneur. You can have co-founders. You must have co-founders. I don't think I'd ever invest in solo founders. It's just too hard. It's like clapping
Yeah.
with one hand. And yeah, I think like I mean, it frustrates me working with VCs that have never built businesses because I just don't think until you felt on your skin what it feels like to carry their weight, it's
Yes.
like I think you make better bets when you've done it yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you can kind of look at a P&L really quickly and see where the fat is. And
Yeah.
and you can ask. I remember an investor asking me in London one time, he said, when's the last time that you were so petrified that you vomited? And I was actually the night before I actually had spewed out the window. It was right before I was thinking, can he still see it? No, it was right before we did a big show. We had all the labels there and
Yeah.
we had it settle out on the roof of a 400-year-old theater and terrifying. And I'm
Wow.
like, that's what the investor's asking. Like, how are you going to cope? Like,
Yeah.
it's like I call it the bottle of whiskey a night test, where when you take on board other people's money, and you've got to take a responsibility with that to deliver to your shareholders. But as an investor, I mean, you take bets. It's like punting. It's like going to the races, like a multi-bet. Like you're gonna look at your portfolio. You're gonna think, okay, I've got a 7 to 10 year fund. I might get 15 to 25 investments. Of that, I reckon 2 will do well, and maybe 1 will fill the fund. Like
Yeah. Gotcha.
it's a real numbers game. A lot of startups do fail. So
Yep. Okay.
And your passion you mentioned at the start was sport. So let's jump to I was going to say IT sports. It's sport. Damien, you threw me off at the start. So let's talk about that what you're doing in that space and also in women's sport in general. What's your views?
yeah, well, like I said, like I think women's sport is the greatest investment opportunity on the planet right now. Especially in the sports thesis. What I'm trying to create here and understand is it's an alternative asset class, right? So women have different bodies, sports played in a different way. Like, Serena Williams was on the late night show saying, I'm not going to play Andy Murray. I play women's tennis. Like,
Mm.
I'm not
Yep.
gonna. Why would
Yep.
I verse him? You know, the
Yep.
greatest mistake we can do is compare women's sport to men's sport because it's just
Mm.
it's like having a can of Pepsi and a can of Coke. Like, you might
Mhm.
love Coke, but you know you'll have a Pepsi if you're thirsty, or you love them both, or you know. So I think that it's a real moment in time. It's a very nascent industry. Still, I was at the WBBL at the Junction Oval on Sunday at 10 a.m. They're programming women's cricket at 10 a.m. at the Junction Oval.
Right.
And I saw Alana King bowling, and she was, you know, 2 weeks before she was playing in the World Cup in India to an audience
Yeah.
of 90 million people. Australia, you know, like if we break it down, like, so for women's sport to succeed like men's sport has, like when I started my first job, I was working with James Hird, and he was a
Mm.
Brownlow medalist, and he was working full time. And that
Yep.
was 30 years ago, right? So
Mm.
men's sport wasn't even fully pro then. Like, I used to say
Mm.
to my boss, I've got my netball training, I need time off. He had football training, he didn't take time off. And
Yeah.
so, like, where this next year is the first year that the girls would have come through their whole sporting career just playing against girls. So
Mm.
we're at this
Wow.
with this at this tipping point where the skill level is extraordinary. Like, if you
Mm.
look at our Australian cricket team, it's a good example. Our first 11 is the best in the world. Our second 11 is the best in the world. Like, the depth and the
Mm.
way the women are playing sport, they're playing that sport is fascinating. Like, technically, they're brilliant. They're inventing new shots. They're smashing it out of the ballpark. So
Mm.
then why is it that if Cricket Australia has two products, one's the men's game, one's the women's game, they sold
Mm.
the rights for the men's game for $1.7 billion. And they
Right.
turned around and they said, well, what value will we put on the women's game? This is last year. And they said, well, we'll bundle it in. It's a $0 value.
Wow.
So that's where we're going.
Yeah.
So we look at the board, look at the structure of the board, the governance, all the way through. Look at the funding. So if the men get the MCG, they get the Ashes, they get the crowds, they get, so 96% of their revenue comes from the men's game. So the whole team is optimized to work on the men's game. So the women's
Mm.
game is seen as lesser than, or, but you know, they've done a really great job, incredible job in building the women's skill set, the players, the
Mm.
brands, you know, but it's an infrastructure issue, and then it becomes a media issue. So women's sport is less than 15% of media. So my company was built to kind of fill the gap because we need assets to invest in. You know, you can't build media assets without access to capital. And so the other thing I kind of noticed, you know, like when I worked in the music industry, like we're working with rock and roll stars in big sporting stadiums and connecting them to fans. And then
Yes.
Taylor and Travis comes along. Hello, like, is he an entertainer or is he a sportsman? And Taylor, is she an athlete or a performer?
Yep.
They both work in the same stadium. They have similar fans, you know. So we're trying to bring a kind of, you know, rock and roll element, culture, you know, sport. And I think that what's happened in the last 5 years is that, you know, women's sport stars are culture makers. They're creating. And so back to the point, when women succeed in sport, when we understand our strength and power and purpose, we succeed in the corporate world, in politics. And actually, I met last week, I met the Queen of Kung Fu in Melbourne, and
Right.
Pang, who's incredible. She does the form of Kung Fu that was invented by women. And in China, like, women's sport's been revered, you know, for thousands of years. And she was telling me how this form of kung fu, which Bruce Lee plays too, by the way,
Mhm.
it was invented by a woman, and it's about using your structural force, you know, your skeletal structural force, and there's a lot of kind of linear. It's the same line of offense and attack, and a lot of yielding. Now, this kind of stuff is like, okay, you don't have to have brute power.
Mm.
Learning how to cultivate power, you know, through maybe a feminine force. And I see such incredible parallels between what happens on the field and what happens in the boardroom and what
Yeah.
happens in domestic relationships too. And this is how power is freedom. And working with Belinda Clark, she captained the Australian cricket team for 12 years. I don't even think she got paid to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and but her ability to kind of, her searing leadership ability is extraordinary. She'd be like, well, you know, there's 50 overs lies, and you've got like 7 different shots, and sometimes you're gonna, you know, you got to focus on each shot innings by innings. And, you know, if you turn up and you keep batting and using your skill sets, you're going to get to your 50 overs. And, you know, and she was the first person in the world to get a double century in an ODI. She's an absolute powerhouse. She's a
Mm.
pocket rocket, but she's using her skills and like I said, how do you overcome fear? How terrifying. Someone's throwing a hard ball at your face, 100 k's an hour more. She's like, you've got the tool in your pocket always, Liza. I'm like, what is that? What? She says, your breath, the breath work. So, like, and I just realized these stories are awe-inspiring. They are off the charts. And we've just done we're in pre-production with Kate and Bronte Campbell, who the Australian women's swimming team has won the 4x4 100 relay 4 times in a row. No country has ever done that, man, women, ever. And we've never heard the story.
Mm.
And they were sisters, and their
Yeah.
story's fascinating. Like the only person in the world that could take their gold medal off them was their own sister. And then they had to go home and share a bedroom together. So we're creating these incredible story worlds because the other thing that's happened in our world is the rise of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all the digital platforms that I know and invest in, and pushing into gaming and the blockchain and Web3 now. It's Web 3.0. So we're trying to bring a really interesting big data driven narrative to kind of create a story world where women athletes and their fans and creators can literally, by telling their story, cultivate and monetize the next billion fans. And then that will bring intergenerational wealth to women, and we will impact the unit economics of the game. So we're kind of trying to do that. It's a small task.
You could probably get that done before lunch based on everything that you were able to achieve.
Well, you never know. You're lucky in a big city.
That's right. I liked your comparison between men's and women's sport, as one's a Pepsi and one's a can of Coke. And I think, again, just a theory of one is that too often sport is just called sport. And therefore the expectations and the audience and the target market and who plays and who watches and all of that, people go, oh, well, it's cricket or it's tennis. And I really liked your analogy of the Pepsi and the Coke. Yes, they're both soft drinks, but they appeal to a very different audience, crowd, and so yeah, I think that's probably the most brilliant thing that I've heard about women's sport is that it's either Coke or Pepsi, but you can't put the two together and call it a soft drink.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you think about what you've done with itsports so far, and the journey, and I understand is you're sort of in the early stages, but what has been the journey so far, and then what have you learnt, and what surprised you?
Yeah, look, I think it's really we're kind of really early, really, really early. We only incorporated a few months ago.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting time to chat. We give ourselves a good long kind of 6 to 8 month runway to do MVP. So we're looking at our minimal viable product. And what we need to study is the concept. We're watching more mature markets like the US and the UK, and we're watching the players like Coco Gauff come off winning the French Open. She gets off, she's still got the trophy in her hand. She grabs her iPhone and she speaks directly to her fans. We're looking at, there's a major disruption happening right now in the sports industry and the music industry. It's a media disruption. There's a great artist who I love and adore, Lizzo, who's going nuts on TikTok right now, saying to young artists, and so I kind of say athlete artists because they're both my worlds. We can talk directly to fans right now, the old broadcast model, the concept that someone would pay $1.6 billion to put a linear broadcast on a TV. We're really building for the next generation of fans, so Gen Z, Gen A, who are watching 35 billion hours on YouTube.
Wow.
There's guys called Mr. Beast and Dude Perfect, and they've got 100 million followers. There's actual individual fans in the UK who have got 20 million subs who are getting the rights to broadcast tier 2 rugby. So at the same time as there's this massive media disruption, there's I think that this is the rise because of investment over the last 10 years in the skill sets of women's sports. So it's this really heady junction. So we're really wanting to own, we see there's three windows in sport. So the first one is that long form, like the ultimate is watching a 5-day test or something on TV. Like our fans just don't do that. Like what we're observing, and that's window one. Window two is more like Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, ESPN, KO, Fox, kind of docuseries, documentary stuff.
Yep.
Where we're sitting is in the creator economy, like the read, write, mix, remix. Like where creators have a more authentic voice than someone on Channel 7 or 10 or 9. So we're really kind of tapping into the algorithm, and we take we're studying fan behaviors, and fan behaviors in women's sport is really different as well, because it is arriving in a generation that is a different breed. I know we have a lot of people in our team that are under 23, 20, we have right down to 16-year-olds working, because that's the world that we're operating in. And these are digital native individuals who have a very different orientation, tech usability, and just a different way of wanting to consume content. So we're more interested in the highlight. I can watch, I love Caitlin Clark. Like the other thing where we're noticing in the fan base is that we're following the players, not the team. Like I've got players I love. I wouldn't know what team they play for. I don't care. I love Caitlin Clark, and she's incredible. But then I also I've got the Valkyries and Liberty and Chicago Sky. I might get sweaters from 3 different clubs because I like the design. Because it's cool. And Taylor Swift was at the Chiefs conference. There's just. So we're really kind of studying fandom, the future of fandom and fan behavior, and I think that also when we're also studying how to create content that works with the algorithm. And the next step is because this is a big data play, what is the future of digital rights of your name, image, likeness? All of our systems are designed around traditional sponsorships and TV linear broadcasts. So every sport now has to think, how do we respond in this new media environment? And because we've been working with the NSOs, the federations, and the players' unions, the unions have said to us, well, this is great, amazing you're doing this for women, but hey, it's not fair for the men. Well, because and ultimately, our company is set up to do men and women. I think we've got a real niche, because we want to. It's kind of like when you look at VC funds, there's a GP catch up. There's a little section where you got to kind of catch up. So we're giving women a chance to catch up and to build a really beautiful new suite of content assets that can and what we're testing is how the players can tap in, because when you're a player, your main thing is you've got to play, you've got to sleep, you've got nutrition, high performance, you've got physio, you've got it's a huge thing. But then also part of your job now is that you've got to talk to your fans in a different way. And so we're seeing the athletes who are kind of 30 plus, maybe moving towards retirement. There's a cultural change that has to happen as well. It's happened in the US. You see these players that are so digitally savvy, and also musicians, artists. I mean, anyone that's not, they don't understand that they're going to probably play well, but they can have a completely other experience in the digital world. So, because you think about it, the normal athlete's going to retire 28 to 35 and they're young. But when we look at the 14-year-olds that we're working with now, they know they go to cricket training, then they grab their phone and do a TikTok about it. Boom. That's, and that's normal. And it's, so it's interesting how it's evolving, So we're still in the sandpit where we're kind of feeling our way, it's like putting a fire hose on your face. You're talking I got to speak this week alone. I'll tell you 3 conversations that were fascinating. One was a woman called Glenys Nunn, who in 1984 won Olympic gold medals, and she's just incredible. It's she talks about greatness, how to achieve greatness. Then I met a midfielder from she plays on the Danish team. She went to Harvard. Now she's been recruited to Gotham City Football Club, one of the best franchises in the US. And she's 23, and her and her 2 mates have just bought land in Ghana, and they've decided to invest their winnings in their salaries in teaching Ghanaian women how to play football to solve world poverty. These are the kind of conversations you just have in a week.
That's amazing.
And she was actually the midfielder, the Danish from New York. She said when she went to Harvard, she realized that when you're an athlete, you all of a sudden you have to become political. Like you have to.
Mm.
And that's a fascinating learning, because I think the whole kind of Trump stuff, happened when she was there, and the war, and like everyone's looking to athletes. So these athletes have a platform.
Mm.
So they're
Mm.
powerful. So
Mm.
we want to teach them how to use the platform
Yeah.
to create extra revenue streams that are outside of their contracts. Because the reason so we're seeing equal pay now, like day rates for our cricketers and footballers and whatnot, but the upside is they don't get the media upside.
Yeah.
We have to
Yeah.
build that. So we're building the narrative infrastructure for women and girls to create intergenerational wealth, and that's kind of why we do what we do.
Cool. That's awesome. Sue?
Oh, I'm just thinking, I'm just thinking we could probably talk forever
Mm.
in terms of what you do, because it's so fascinating, and the
Yeah.
conversations that you get to have, and hopefully you record a lot of them, because they sound so interesting. But so, what would be your advice be to an aspiring leader or entrepreneur, just to sort of bring it back around the conversation?
Well, I'd say, be brave, be bold.
Hmm.
Don't see limits. Think globally from day one.
Yeah.
Don't take, I mean, in our world, no never means no. It means just not today. and and I say to the boys every night, you know what? If you believe, you can achieve.
Love
Is
it.
that cheesy enough for you?
No, it's no. It's just, well, yeah, but it's true, right? It's
Yeah.
absolutely true. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Liz, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, we could literally, there's so many things that, we could keep on going, but really want to say thank you very much for your time today, and just the energy that's jumped through this forum is just awesome. So, Sue, any insights? What were the, lots of insights, but what was one thing that if you could narrow it down that Liza got you thinking about?
I think in today's world, one of the things was that hold your breath, because I think we all want everything instantaneously. So I think that was a really great reflection to me. It was just hold your breath.
Hmm.
Sometimes, it doesn't. And the other one, of course, that no is negotiable. I think that's something that everyone's got to remember. So thank you.
Yeah.
That was great.
Cool. And Liza, if people want to, I mean, you sort of talked about you sort of in the early days, people want to learn more about itsports. Where do they go? Give us this is your plug, your commercial.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
just jump on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all the internet, and our handles itsports global, of
Yep.
course.
Awesome. Terrific. Liz, thank you so much.
A
Sue,
pleasure.
thank you very much. We look forward to bringing you another episode of On My Couch. In the interim, if you want to learn more about IMC Group, we're not on TikTok. But we are on the internet, and we are on LinkedIn. So omc-group.com.au. And thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks,
Cheers.
Jamie.